Yeah, we're live.
Here.
Hi. Oh gosh, I don't know if I'm hot or cold.
We are live.
Oh, we're live. Fantastic.
What's up, Jimmy? Guest number one.
Is that Leonie?
It is.
What's up, Jimmy? Oh man, ab cramp. Oh, that's always fun post show. That's fun to have live too. Okay. Good times. I thought of something today. I was like, we've talked about Team Guac or Team Nut Butter. We haven't talked about Team if you could choose your fat, what would it be? And it didn't have to come from Justin's list. And
I was gonna say duck butter.
Oh man, I was gonna make a strong case for butter or honestly cream cheese.
Oh no, duck butter. Isn't that what builds up in that schmugma?
I knew this.
I really want to laugh. I'm so scared of my abs cramping again. That was painful.
When you said
There's
duck
nothing
butter,
funny about duck butter.
milk doesn't come from ducks, so I wonder what you're really talking about.
I also had a really cool dad joke for you guys. Justin, you seemed surprised by my dad joke with you and Joe on.
It just crashed, Jimmy. You'll get insurance will cover it.
What is he saying?
I got an ab cramp driving.
Occupational hands at hazard.
Had to pull it
He got an ab cramp when he was driving. I told him to just crash.
God, it's the worst. It's the worst when you get them at like times, or for me, if I'm filming a loom video for clients and I move the wrong way, I'll get an ab cramp. So all of a sudden I'll go from talking about like, hey, here's the pelvis, inlet, outlet, and all of a sudden my face just goes, holy shit, wow. And that's not awkward or anything.
Yeah, it looks like you're having this because you always do that thing where you like try to stretch your abs out and you don't talk and they're like, what's going on? What's going on?
I would joke about having a seizure, except I actually have those too. So like,
yeah, that's what I was gonna say. You're having a seizure, but
So I had a couple of questions from people on Instagram, nothing really crazy. I think most of it is actually geared towards Justin. Shocker there. Oh, actually there was one for me. That's good. So we had someone ask T4 and T3 use in prep. When and why or why not?
T3 probably if you're going to use it. When if you absolutely have to and no other time. I don't like to use T3. Most females have to, and we've talked about second bodybuilding. Most first bodybuilding men have to. Once you carry enough muscle, it's not that you don't need it. Partly it's that your metabolism's higher. You get to eat more in the same daily calorie deficit. Doesn't feel as severe as it did because it's a smaller portion of your total calories. And then also, if you're a 130-pound female and you're maybe carrying a 30, 40 pounds over what you would be muscle mass wise if you didn't work out. But if you're, a 260-pound male, you might be carrying 100 pounds more muscle. So the risk of getting too flat or eating muscle or losing fullness is higher. T4, sure. It just not like I don't like T4. It just doesn't, T4 is only going to convert to as much T3 as you need. And in most cases, people aren't deficient in T3. Everyone thinks their thyroid downregulates dramatically, but it really doesn't. I never see it on blood work. Everyone says it happens, but anytime I see blood work, the blood work doesn't correlate with that.
Case of something like Hashimoto's or something where actually is a deficiency in thyroid.
Yeah, and then the doctor should be prescribing it at that, Yeah, I have quite, and that's really common in females now, especially masters competitors. It's like very common. But one interesting thing with T3 that I think I need to have the study ready because I've mentioned it a couple times. But my buddy Brad Hall actually found the study. They followed people using T3. I'm sure it was bodybuilders. Some of them as much as 100 micrograms per day for up to a decade. And all, when they stopped the T3, their function returned to normal within 4 weeks, even after a decade at 100 micrograms per day. So all the worries about blowing out your thyroid or things like that do not seem to pan out with the data, which I think is interesting.
There was a time I remember on forums when people also claimed that you should use T4 when you're using GH in high doses. Was there anything to that?
Yeah, I mean, GH does kind of downregulate the thyroid or reduce production, but really not so dramatic. I mean, it lowers testosterone too. It kind of blunts all the other hormones. But if you look at people with acromegaly, one thing I like to do with GH, and people kind of get like over analytical with the timing and things like that, and worry and say that it's not going to work if you take it at the wrong time and stuff. I always say, look at someone with giantism. Like, look at Andre the Giant. Was Andre the Giant on T4? I don't know. I would bet his testosterone was reduced. That's almost universal. People with thyroid or acromegaly or pituitary gland tumors that produce too much growth hormone almost always have very low testosterone. They don't always have messed up thyroids. And then also, like with the dosing, when people think you have to be so specific and perfect with your GH timing, to me, that means Andre the Giant could have not been the giant if his body just produced the GH at the wrong time. It's it's like it works. There might be an optimal timing, but it's got a fairly long half-life, almost on the order of like 12 hours or something, I think, which means that at the 24-hour mark, it's still only going through its second half-life, so it's still half active. So yeah, that kind of went on a tangent there, but no, I don't really. If you're on high dose, you're like, I hate using IUs, but that's what everyone uses. IUs aren't correct, but what people call 10 IUs is usually like 3 milligrams or 3.3 milligrams. If you're on a little over 3 milligrams a day, you may need it. I've never seen it pan out in blood work, though. I've had a lot of clients take high amounts of GH. I've never had a client with suppressed GH that was where they had normal GH or normal thyroid production, started taking higher doses of GH, their thyroid tanked, and then when they stopped the GH, the thyroid came back. Like anything to really correlate it with the GH. I've never really had that.
We have a couple of questions too.
Correct, Guarido. You've been on here before. You guys have your hard names. Where's all the Joes and Bobs? Where's the people that, for dumbasses like me, that for us Americans that can pronounce only two separate names? Yeah. He said, Guarido says it's like the rumors that Atlantis or any other insulin will make you insulin resistant. I mean, there's nothing special about Atlantis other than it lasts longer. Caesar, perfect. I can do that. Like the salad.
Oh God, that's the most American thing I think I've heard. Like the salad, right? Except it's a salad with like all the dressing and. So we have a couple more questions that are from different people, but a little bit related. So the first one is more about, can you go into detail on what it means to train the body to eat more without getting fat, or the process and when you would increase calories, carbs, things like that. And then the follow-up to that from someone else is, if you're doing it with a natural competitor, would you see as great of a fluctuation on
I hate to cut you off, but I just, so I don't miss this, because Gumman asked the question. He's on here every time, and he says, Dr. Todd Lee recommends T4 when using HGH. Lots of people in the EU are using it too. Yes, I know lots of people use it, and I know that the common discussion around it is that when you use high-dose GH, your thyroid production dips. I'm saying that in 20 years of seeing blood work twice a year or more for every client, where the majority of them are on GH, I have not seen a reduction in thyroid output that was, clearly correlated to GH. And I've had clients do some crazy things over the years, and I've never seen. I know that's what everyone does, but the term we always joke about evidence-based. Like if you try to be evidence-based, then I would want to see the evidence that is the case. And in the blood work that I've seen, it has not been.
Mm-hmm.
What was that question?
Sorry, Danny.
No, you're good. And it looks like someone else just left a kind of big paragraph in the chat.
Oh, yeah, I've heard that. Wet basements. Have you heard the common trope that working in the heat melts the fat off? I work in construction. Guys always say you should get shredded in the summer easily. Well, they lose weight. This is the big problem. We want to lose body fat. And the way we track that is we step on a scale that measures our body mass. Well, 70% of your body is water, 15% is fat. So when you're stepping on the scale, you're measuring your water. Kind of an analogy that I use would be your car. You could technically tell when your car was low on gas by weighing it every day. 15% of your car's weight is gasoline when it's full. So you could do that, but your car is going to vary in weight much more by whether there's luggage in the trunk, whether you have passengers, whether there's things on the car, whether you're transporting something. So yes, you could, but that's a pretty crappy way to tell how much gas you have when you're weighing a car that has all these other variables. Because if you have a car full of 6 people, like if you're bloated with water, you could be out of gas and your car looks like it weighs like it has a full tank, which is what happens. What happens in the summer in the heat, you actually burn less calories, if anything, because if you are, our body temperature is 98.6 degrees. So if you're outside in 60-degree weather, you still have to maintain a body temp of 98.6 degrees, which means you have to produce more heat. We're not very good at adjusting. We have to wear clothes. Animals use brown adipose tissue to create that heat. Brown adipose tissue is like a metabolic uncoupler, like DNT. It drives a proton in the mitochondria and releases heat energy rather than ATP. And humans had probably active brown adipose tissue because we still have some brown adipose tissue, but we don't use it anymore. So now we have to wear clothes. But if anything, you burn less calories in the heat.
He goes on walks outside, scares our neighbors.
Yeah, shirtless in the snow.
This is really a thing with that.
Well, he is hairy enough that he might actually have bare level brown adipose tissue.
You're not wrong.
With the construction, you're just losing water weight. You're not losing fat faster. I'm doing terrible about being quick with the answer. Sorry, guys.
How to best manipulate water for a full look? Is glycerol an option? Tried it back in 98 to 2000. It seems to work. Any experience? It's cheap.
It can, if you,
recomp after
powerlifting.
Yeah, powerlifting.
If you be careful, you don't shit your brains out though, because it's a laxative. And in high enough doses, it's a strong laxative. So, and they make glycerol depository, the book depository. They make glycerol suppositories as an actual laxative. So, obviously we're putting it in the other hole, but it gets down there either way. It's a stimulant laxative. It stimulates the bowels to contract, to move. But no, I don't.
For fullness, is there any advantage to that? Is there a dosage that you prescribe or any suggestion with that?
I don't know, not really. And I'll give my reasoning. Go watch Ronnie Coleman, The Unbelievable. He's 5.5 weeks out of the Olympia. He could have stepped on stage and won any one of those days across the week, regardless of what he's eating, high carbs, low carbs, training, doing cardio, whatever. He looked ready to win the Olympia. You're either in shape or you're not. You want to fine tune the way you look. But if you're trying to change the way you look the final week, you're just not in shape.
Glycerol too. There's probably a very big risk for spilling.
Yeah, and worse for more. What if you get diarrhea on stage, and how much? How much better are you going to look? Take your favorite pro bodybuilder and have them do glycerol in their next contest. Are they going to look like a different bodybuilder? Are you going to even know they did it? No, you won't. You'll know whether they're in shape or not. But so I just don't like to do those things, especially going back to evidence-based. We don't have any data on it. So I'm not going to guess with a client of how many grams of glycerol is going to work and what time is going to work. And I'm not going to create an evidence-based approach to it by ruining 50 people's peak week so that the 51st person can be 0.5% better that no one will even notice it happened.
I'm going to add a little caveat to that and just bring up that even on my peak week for Chicago, I asked if I could have oats for meal instead of rice. And you were like, I would prefer rice because you never know, like oats can be a little risky.
Yeah.
I'm a hot cereal girl, but I think especially for peak week, just being that dialed in, like Justin is not one to take risks. You want to know what you're getting into. So unless you've used glycerol at some other point in your prep cycle, implementing it on peak week, because every peak is going to be different too. You're going to fill out differently. You're going to be different flatness. So unless you've recreated that exact same situation, it's probably not worth using a substance that's really, in terms of a result, highly volatile in terms of what you'll see as a result.
Yeah, as a general rule, on the final 3 days, if we're adding something, if we can't say we're going to add this because it's going to do exactly this and you're going to look exactly this much different at this exact time, we shouldn't be adding it because it's guesswork. And you put in way too much work to guess how you're going to look on stage.
Yeah.
I'll say glycerol is probably better for the opposite reason. If you need to make weight and you need this much, just take one of those suppositories.
Yeah, yeah, that'll work.
Well, I was going to say to fill back out. I think after I did that 20-pound cut.
No, I was saying if you were like my situation,
I know,
you could make it cut off.
Did you use that? Did you use those one time?
No. Actually, our first prep, I ate way too many large raw salads, and I had to use some to.
Oh, gotcha.
Did you guys see the increase the weight cap for Classic? I haven't seen
Yeah.
the video, but I just saw Tyler Manion posted something today.
Yeah,
I feel like it's about time.
What happened?
I don't think it was a ton, but yeah, they increased it.
Yeah, but you think about all those guys who just needed to drop like a pound or two, or like Darwin Uribe trains out or he was training at Destination for a while, and he's moving up, or he was going to move up. I don't know if he will with the increase in cap because he was just so lean that to fill out his frame, his weight cuts were just getting so drastic. He looked,
Oh man.
he looked like death. But he was also one of the top contenders at one point. So I think it's good they're doing that. It's going to be interesting to see how the class evolves now.
I think the top contenders are still just going to push the limit, and they're still
Oh,
going
for
to end
sure.
up being barely
Bigger.
there, just a little bigger.
Yeah, they're just going to be fuller, maybe fill out the frame a little bit more and be a little bit more in shape.
Yeah.
It's going to be wild to see. It's going to be cool, I think.
Got some good questions here. Kind of, yeah. Paul Soren Lindbergh says Paul Borenson recommended the glycerol with the swell drink, and Paul would, and that was kind of his job, was to kind of talk about like unique or interesting or exotic ways of doing things, and that's good because insulin would never have become a thing if Dan Duchaine or someone didn't try this crazy thing, so sometimes they hit and sometimes they work. It's just not, for me, it's not predictable enough. And when because I've had people use it, not in peak week, but just playing with it, and when it does like work, you can't really even tell. It's like you can tell, but on stage it's not going to be the difference maker. It's always get shredded, and then once you're shredded, hope you left enough time to fill out, and then after you fill out, hope you left enough time to dry out. That's the whole process.
What is your recommendation on a protocol to deploy when a client is showing signs of gyno? Looking into this issue because of the test EQ cycle. I love that word. By the way, everyone's talking about deploying drugs like they're soldiers.
Yeah, this is first testing. Well, if it's testing EQ, that's going to be E2 gyno, so any anti-estrogen will work. I would recommend Aromacin. The worry with Arimidex is it sounds like this is going to be a short-term problem. Arimidex would work just fine. It's usually easier to find. But Arimidex is not we're getting a really bad. Is the mic too close to we're getting feedback?
I'm getting it from you too. Is that better?
I think
Yeah.
testing. Yeah. With Arimidex, if you're going to just use it for a short period of time, Arimidex is not a suicide inhibitor of aromatase, meaning it binds to the aromatase enzyme and negates it. But it can eventually leave that aromatase enzyme, and then that aromatase enzyme can go back and do its job. Aromacin is a suicide inhibitor, meaning once it's bound to that enzyme, it's bound forever. It'll never leaves. Now, that doesn't mean you never have to worry about estrogen because your body produces more aromatase enzymes. But what can happen with Arimidex is you have Arimidex bound to these aromatase enzymes, and then you stop taking it because the gyno's gone. And then you have all these enzymes that eventually get free again when the Arimidex leaves, and then you're producing more enzymes also, and then boom, you got all this aromatization happening, and you can get an estrogen surge. With Aromacin, you don't have to worry about that.
There's another protocol that I haven't tried this, but a couple people I know have said that it did something. I don't know how much you can really get rid of gyno once it's set in, but it's early on. There's a serum called raloxifene.
Oh, yeah.
You use that instead of Nolvadex. Raloxifene is the chemical name. I think the brand name is Evista. But people have used that at a fairly high dose for a few weeks at a time instead of nuked gyno that was, early onset.
Yeah. If it's hard mass, I don't think there's anything you can do. If it's swollen and painful and sensitive, but it hasn't turned into a hard lump yet, I think the Raloxifene can reverse some of it.
Such bad heebie-jeebies just thinking about.
What, like gyno surgery?
Yeah.
Someone did it themselves and posted on the forum years ago.
Oh, wow. Yeah, no thanks.
You want to read that?
I wonder what the scarring was like on that. Do I have a preference of what day you like to get check-ins after, high, medium, or low? Not really. It doesn't matter long term. I mean, when we get closer to a show, it might matter. It's really just where my days are busy. Our clients always are like, well, since I'm going to compete on Saturday, I figure I'll check in on Saturday. And it's like, well, no, everyone else is competing on Saturday. You're not going to get your check-in answered. And when you're competing, you're not going to want me answering check-ins on Saturday morning. But so I spread it out. But I don't like it. I don't like it on the the day after, the day of, or the day before a high day, at least when dieting. And the only reason is because when you're dieting, if there's ever a time we'll make a very quick change, like a one-time change, it would be to adjust high day to fill you back out. And I don't want to have to wait a whole week after we see the pictures before you have that high day.
Yeah. What about that question that you said a minute ago?
We've got a couple diet, and we've got 1 or 2 PT as well. So this is 2 different people kind of dovetailing off of each other. First one is, can Justin go into detail on what it means to train the body to eat more without getting fat, and when he would go to add calories, etc. And the next one after that would be, if you're doing that with a natural competitor, would you still fluctuate carbs as high as an enhanced competitor in relation to each person's body weight?
The first question, we have like a whole section on it on teamtroponin.com. What we call building a metabolic monster or something like that, where we go step by step through all the changes for that exact situation. And it was actually for a natural competitor also. But generally it's really, I think I don't have a formula. It's just years of doing it. You start out with a diet. You typically try to add carbohydrates around training. Usually their high day is kind of set in stone at first, and then on their medium carb days, you'll try to add carbs around training. And when you see they can handle it and they're not getting fat, and you've got several weeks in without a lot of body weight gain, they feel good, their body composition is not changing, then maybe add some calories or some carbs to the other meals on medium day. Then the next step would be adding some carbs to low day. And then the next step would be adding some fats. And then the next step would be adding an additional high day usually. And then the very last one would be adding protein. But protein is really more not for like increasing metabolism. It's more that, okay, this guy's added 30 pounds of muscle and we haven't changed his protein. We should probably raise it 5 grams a meal.
One other one, just going to read it verbatim. Thoughts on short v long cycle for BNC. Example, 4 weeks additional test P and Anavar, then back to cruise dose.
I don't like short cycles. Muscle growth takes too long. What are you going to get in 4 weeks? You're going to go in 1/10 of an ounce? This sport, and that's where I didn't like Paul Borenson, because people always think like, throw the kitchen sink at it for 6 weeks and magic's going to happen. You're not going to change a physique in a month and a half. You're not going to do that.
No, I want to grow before the Olympia. Don't say that just yet.
Well, that's the one time you can a little bit, because you can get the rebound, and it's more that you'll get the rebound and we'll still be lean enough where we don't have to suffer so hard in the next diet. You'll hold on to that size a little better. But no, I like just long, this sport is boring. This sport is investing. Anyone who does this sport should be in the stock market, because it's the exact same thing. It's the people like the day traders, or you see people pop up on Instagram all the time. They get all hyped. They got talked into becoming a day trader with one of those scam things, and they post all their discussions about trades, and they're trying to make all this money real quick, and they always lose their money, and nothing. They don't ever get rich. And the person who gets rich is always the gram. And actually, Vanguard went through and did an audit one time, and all their highest total return percentages were from people who either forgot they had an account or died and didn't have a will. And it was just the people that didn't fuck with anything and let time pass forever and let compounding interest work. And that's the same thing with the sport. You just get a cycle where you can eat, you can train hard. It's enough milligrams that you're going to grow, but it doesn't affect your eating. And then let 16 weeks pass. You're not going to do anything in 6 weeks.
It's something that Dave and I were talking about a little bit too, where people are like, oh, you guys, for not being bodybuilding specifically all that long, you guys have really done well. I'm like, well, because we have 12, 15 years of training behind us.
Yeah, it's weird how people don't seem to. Every time we say
we just decided to jump in a show one day. We've been doing.
I've been training for 20 years and competing for about 3 or 4, and they're so surprised. I'm like, no, it's the 20 years that.
Yeah. Well, that's a perfect example, actually, because people don't see you all the time. They only see the rare photos you post online. So to them, it looks like this did happen overnight. And that's the big trick or fraud, is that the people watching, they only see you infrequently. And like Dave, especially, has added 100 pounds. So every time they see you, you're up 10 pounds, but they don't see you every day. They see you, like when you're on their feed, 3 times a year or something. And so it looks like you must be doing something magical that's making this happen so fast. But like you said, it's the 20 years of grinding.
Yeah. And people should keep that long game in mind too, if they're about to do something stupid in training. Mm-hmm. And granted, we're both meatheads and we both taking risks here and there because there's like an emotional component to our training. But really, like it's cliche, but one rep will not make you, but it can break you. And if one bad set puts you out of training for several weeks in a row, then you really are just wasting
or months,
time.
or a year and a half.
Yeah. You tear your adductor tendon off the pelvis.
Yeah. Talk about that.
Yeah, the sport's weird because it's the opposite of everything we think it is or what we want it to be. It's all boring. It's all slow. It's all doing. We think we want to do 100% of the things right 90% of the time. Wait, how do I word this? You want to, it's not doing 100% perfect, like doing everything perfect down to the milligram, the perfect cycle, the 6-week blast, and 90% of the time you're doing that, and 10% of the time you just fuck off and forget to work out or don't pay attention. The people who succeed are the ones who are 90% on point 100% of the time. They always do the main things right. They never miss the workout. Their cycles are well thought out, but not anything that's going to cause health problems to where they have to stop a cycle. They eat their meat and rice every meal for year after year, and then even worse, the people who on the outside are watching someone who does that. It looks like they blew up overnight.
Yeah.
What gets me is that some people still seem to think complicated cycles are necessary, not even for prep. You'll see you go on forums still, and someone will post an off-season cycle.
Tommy John.
It's like 8 different compounds with things changing every 3 weeks.
Yep. Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. So it's like, why? What? And then whenever I see that, I want to ask someone, be like, okay, what was the reason for the changing, and what change in growth rates or your physique, or what are the reasons for this? What can you tell me that this change is going to produce this outcome? If you can't, then why did you do it? I want to thank Tommy John. Danny, you got some money for your Olympia prep.
Well, thank you, Tom.
Oh, thank you.
I'm going to steal it though, but either way, we appreciate it, John.
Really?
He just said, "This is for Danny's Olympia Fund, $4.99."
Who is that? I can't read the name. My eyes are super.
Tommy John.
Thank you so much.
There's a brand of underwear named after you.
Heyo.
All right, Samson Yang's about to scroll off the screen. So he says, thoughts on Dr. Israetel claim that getting stronger doesn't make you bigger. I like Mike Israetel's stuff for the most part.
I just saw it, and I agree with it. And I know Mike's taking a lot of shit right now because of how he looked at his recent competition, but I think I know how people are interpreting that. And I don't think it's what he actually means by it. Granted, I haven't watched the video, but I've heard him touch on this exact topic before. If you're training for bodybuilding, you train to make your muscles bigger. They get bigger and therefore stronger. And because they're stronger, you have to do more weight, more reps to continue eliciting the same or better stimulus. So its muscle gets bigger, and then that makes you stronger. Some people think it's going to work the other way around, where you train for strength for its sake, for its own sake, and then being stronger allows you to build muscle better. And I think Dan and I might actually think there's some truth to that. I think there's value in trying to get stronger, but I think I mostly agree with what he's saying there.
Yeah, I think I get exactly. I think you worded it really well. Because you could look at look at John Hack or Bilbo Swaggins or Jamal. I mean, look at any of the powerlifters.
You can look at the evolution of back double series. I have an off season where I focus on just getting stronger, and I have an off season where I really toe the line and actually like training like a bodybuilder, and the difference is freaking enormous, even as a female.
Yeah.
Where like, normally I'm not going to put on nearly the amount of size that someone like Dave or any other dude will. So if you want to check out that series, it's on the site too. But it really kind of details, why and when is it important to get strong, and what does that actually facilitate? Why is it of value, and when do you need to really work on, and as Justin has said many times, training the muscle, not the movement.
Mm-hmm. And that means that, again, the training is going to be a little bit boring because gains in strength that are the result of true muscle tissue gain, well, given how slow you gain actual muscle tissue, those strength gains are going to be slow, assuming that your technique from one session to the next is staying fairly consistent. So sometimes you're just going to have to be okay with that. Like, you're not going to hit a big PR every time. This is probably why people like Dante Trudell were all about using, 2.5 pound plates or even buying 1.25 pound plates to bring into the gym with you.
Mm-hmm. I'm actually curious, Justin, I'd like to hear your thoughts on this. So for me, especially selfishly, looking at kind of coming to Olympia, I feel like a lot of my off season, it did a good job of toeing the line on getting strong. Like, I used deadlifts pulling from the floor, but I also did quite a bit of like pumpy bodybuilding work. And right now my training looks very, very different than it has in the past. Like right now I'm doing a lot more true bodybuilding work than, especially just from Chicago up till, the O. Is that kind of thing where, you think about density and you think about what built your physique versus like what's going to maintain it, different training styles? I kind of want to hear that.
I don't think it maintain it. I think you're strong enough where there's not a ton of value in getting stronger,
But I want 500.
Huh?
Just kidding.
She says, but I want to pull 500.
Yeah, there's mental value for sure. But you got very strong. So now it's probably better to utilize that strength in a more pure bodybuilding approach, and you'll grow faster because of it. Yeah, I went up before, kind of on the same one. I think on the same line. Someone asked about Jordan Peters, and he's one of my favorite guys. So I want to. Wet Basement says, Justin, can you talk a bit about Jordan Peters' training? I see you comment on some of his posts, and I also admire his strength and training style, especially today's optimal training world. Yeah, I love him because he's like kind of done everything that I always liked or thought. It's like people get so wrapped up in all the minutia, and it's like, you want big erectors or you want big glutes or you want big hamstrings. Deadlift 600 for 10 with, real true RDL or stiff leg form. You're going to have big hamstrings whether you want them or not. There's some things that are just, and that now that kind of is misleading to what we just said, but we're talking about deadlifting specifically to activate the hamstrings and glutes as opposed to deadlifting to move weight like in a powerlifting meet.
It was cool training with James earlier this year too, because again, like he trains very much like GP. They're opening that gym together, which is going to be super, super cool. But I really, really liked the way that James approached things, where he had movements where he really just kind of wanted to hit that intensity and get really strong. Then he had other movements where he was very accurate. And I love that term that all the UK guys use, where it's not like, bring out your protractor and pull, it's 25 degrees, there's 20-degree angle, boo. But accurate in terms of like, are you hitting what you intend to hit? Because the reality is for most of us, like if you're trying to get set up to hit a specific division of your lat, your lats and your structure are going to be different than whoever you saw on social media telling you to use that structure. So as long as you're accurate within what works for your body in terms of putting the tension where you're intending to put it, I think it's important. But even JP will talk about that, where he's got movements where he's got, just pure overload versus ones he's looking to hit with a little bit more accuracy. I think
there was a period of time where I was trying to work on a generalized training approach, and I didn't know how to really describe it, but it was basically there were two phases to any workout, two sections to the workout. There was the main movement or main movements where really I wanted to simplify and cut all the fluff out of as much as possible. And it was basically, you're going to pick a heavy compound movement, and the whole criteria for choosing it was what gets me the most out of breath, meaning it's activating the most muscle fibers, and then your job for that movement was basically to get stronger, provided again you weren't changing the motion, you weren't changing the movement, you weren't changing your leverages to get stronger, you were just getting stronger. And then once that was over, the rest of the workout you basically trained like Flex Wheeler, and it was just pure bodybuilding. I never really panned out to anything, but I wanted to write something about that at one point.
And I think what's really cool, I wrote this on that back double series too, is I think all three of us think very similarly about training. The way I really love to structure sessions, and I talked to Dave about this with his pressing because his humerus is so long, is that you have that main compound movement, and then you have, I learned this term from Sweet Burns a long time ago. He probably picked up from one side at some point, but the mechanically similar movement, where you're training in a rep range to almost bring up the kind of main movement so that you're bringing up the lagging part of the weak point, almost like, you treat a weak point and lift. And then from there, it's all about chasing a pump, maximizing shorten range, mid-range, lengthen range, structuring the session in a way that makes sense in terms of blood flow. So you have that kind of, itch to scratch. It gets you excited, but also kind of gets you out of breath. And you have a movement that's going to promote strength improvements, or at least mechanically give you that extra leg to improve your compound. And then from there, it's all the pump work to kind of build that 3D round shape.
I've kind of liked ordering things opposite of that though lately, or for the last year or two.
Levels, yeah.
Yeah,
on a push versus a pull day,
it's different. Push days, I'll do the heavier stuff first usually, but like on a pull day, nothing productive is probably going to happen after I deadlift. Like I'm super out of breath, at least at this weight. So I'll go in the opposite. Like today's workout was like I did lying leg curl, seated leg curl, 45-degree raise for glutes, and then I deadlifted or RDLs.
I want to clarify because what Basement says a good question. He says, doesn't this kind of go against Justin's point of show me someone who pulls 600 times 10 with a small back. And that's the, what did you use? Word did you use, Danny? That, oh my God, my brain's shut down. Like precision or
accuracy.
Accuracy. Yeah. So
form of movement is always going to be a bigger determinant of the overall stimulus and where that stimulus is accrued. So like we'll take a deadlift as an example. I'm a back dominant puller, Dave's a hip dominant puller, and you can see it in our back shots. Dave's glutes are enormous. My back is thick. And so you can look at a deadlift and say it's just a deadlift, but in the reality is how you perform it is always going to be a bigger determinant more than just like the movement selection itself. It's not, the movement is nothing more like a name. Like the name deadlift is just nothing more than a name of putting weight on a bar and moving it, but it doesn't tell you what muscles are actually doing the movement. So we put these labels on, and it's a semantics way to kind of help us wrap our brains around it. But
yeah, I think it goes back to try to like clarify this with the deadlift. Yes, if you're gonna have a thick back, if you pull 600 times 10, you're not gonna win a bodybuilding contest. You're not pinpoint accuracy training on your rear delts. You're not targeting your lats. You're not hit. There's more to bodybuilding than just the muscles moved in a deadlift. There's getting stronger in the main movements is going to add a lot of mass to the core muscles, the main large muscle body groups, but you're not going to get massive biceps doing deadlifts. You're not going to get massive triceps. And if you try to get massive biceps by getting doing really heavy curls, you're not going to have big biceps because the biceps. Yes, yeah. So there's actually there's very much less correlation between strength and hypertrophy even than probably thought. And there's Flex Wheeler is an example of someone with a very impressive back who couldn't deadlift anywhere close to 610. So there's a lot going on, meaning that if you take someone who's deadlifting 300 for 10 right now, and 2 years later they're deadlifting 600 for 10, yes, their back is going to be bigger. That doesn't mean that they didn't optimally grow all the muscles of their back for a bodybuilding purpose during that time. So there's, we always try to just catchwords and buzzwords and phrases, I've said in the past, you want big triceps, start doing dips. When you're doing sets of 20 with 100 pounds hanging from your waist, you're going to have big triceps whether you want it or not. And yes, that's true. But you can't just do that for every body part. You're not going to get big side delts just by being really good at overhead pressing or rear delts so it's just it's just more that there's more to the. And then also you got to remember that yes, making a muscle stronger tends to make the muscle bigger, or like Dave put it, when a muscle gets bigger it's going to be stronger, but that's different than movements. People always think if I get stronger in a movement does not automatically correlate to larger muscle. And that's the main thing. When you're training as a bodybuilder, you need to work the muscle. Just, I could put 225 on the bar and probably get 10 curls, on my biceps would be doing nothing. It's all going to be, basically a reverse hang clean. And the bar will go from my shin to my, upper chest at 10 times, which is technically a curl. But that doesn't mean my biceps are doing the work or that my biceps are growing. So in that case, I could put the 25s on, do 95-pound curls, and my biceps are going to grow dramatically faster than doing 225-pound curls because my biceps are doing the work. So it's more that. It's not like we're saying weight doesn't matter or, try not to get strong. It's that you have to activate the muscle. And a lot of movements using the correct muscles mean you're not going to be moving the most amount of weight that you could for that movement.
Yeah, I think we've talked about this a lot. And again, I think it's something that three of us really agree on in terms of, yeah, it's fun to have some of these big compounds, but if you're not hitting the isolations, and especially I think, Justin, you kind of draw a crowd that has kind of this hybridization of being a strength sport athlete, whether it's powerlifting, strongman, Olympic lifting, whatever.
Yeah, being strong's fun. That's the other thing,
But there's commonalities in terms of what's lagging. And I think that's really, really important. I work with a couple of your guys right now that have a really long powerlifting history, but you can see they want to get on stage and their delts are, non-existent. Rear delts rear delts aren't there. Triceps are okay from pressing, but quad growth isn't there. So you'll see.
Well, usually the triceps will look like from pressing, pressing movements. They'll have like a thick look. Their outer head will usually be big, but like when they do a front double bicep, they don't have that long head hanging, or they do a rear lat, they don't have that long head like rounded out.
I think a lot of the strength athletes and strength obsessed people, they kind of know this, but it's hard for them to admit it. It's almost like diet. It's like you can tell someone you're supposed to have 6 ounces of steak with a meal, and you know that they know that it should have been like flank steak, and then they eat ribeye, and you're like, dude, this is a diet. Come on.
Yeah.
Like you're training for bodybuilding.
And then someone in the wet basements followed up with, and wouldn't it all, let's all be nutrition. If John Heck was smashing 6,000 calories a day, wouldn't he grow significantly? Yes, most of his muscles would get bigger. He would not be a good bodybuilder though, because he's not training. He'd have a very, very thick back. He'd weigh a lot more. He would look like a large power lifter, which would be, like a thick chest, thick back, thick glutes, probably not a ton of quad sweep, not a ton of arm size.
There's a question that came through on my Instagram asking for the best tips for creating symmetry in the back and shoulders. And I think this is really interesting to look at because we're really obsessed with the idea of symmetry, and yet the human body is not symmetric. We have multiple inherent asymmetrical biases in terms of our neuromuscular system, in terms of our stability, in terms of like if you just look at our body and you peel off the front layer of muscles, you're going to see right where we stabilize from, which is our diaphragm, is not the same left and right. And the diaphragm is going to have a big influence on ribcage position, which is going to influence shoulders. So I know it's hard. There are a lot of layers to that, and there are a lot of layers of compensation. And I think, one of the things that I would always challenge people to think about is how important is your symmetry? And is symmetry something you're chasing because you think you should? Like if you're, not necessarily competing, is it something you're chasing because you have pain? And so you're wondering if there's a correlation, causation between asymmetry and pain? Or is it that you're a stage athlete and you actually have to be symmetrical? And those are 3 very different scenarios. For most people, honestly, I don't think symmetry is all that important. We have these asymmetries for a reason. It's normal. It's natural. It's part of being a human. And I think that we get very, very fixated on it. And I would even say that for most of us, we try to pin this, any pain patterns we may have on an asymmetry. Well, my right ankle trap is dominant. So I have a hard time. I think it's creating my right shoulder pain. Maybe. But there are probably some other things at play too. And one of the biggest things that we see time and time again, research is showing us, is that this is very much an interdependent system. We have way too many systems functioning together within our body, from the pain management side to postural neuro side, to just the musculoskeletal side. But if symmetry is important to you, I would start addressing it by looking at where that asymmetry starts. Which, you guys all know my bias. I'm going to sit here and say, what's the R word? It's the rib cage, yeah.
I was just gonna say there's the most words without saying rib cage.
I was really biting my tongue.
I think that you answered what that person was talking about. I always get confused when people use the word symmetry in a bodybuilding contest, because in bodybuilding it doesn't really mean left to right.
I know, yeah.
I hate that. It's the wrong word for what they're talking about, but it's not going to change.
Yeah.
I think we missed a few questions up here. We got that one.
Someone says, I got an Instagram question, is having a test level above 2,400 on a cruise harmful? Yeah, you're not. I think of cruising as TRT. So when I cruise on, which is really all I do anymore, my last blood work, my test level was 396. That was 6 days after my TRT injection of 200 milligrams. And so I'm probably 700 or 800, maybe a little more the day after. And by the end of the week, I'm around 400. And so that is, I'm traveling the range of normal testosterone levels, starting out probably a little above the high end of normal, but by the end of the week, I'm a little low, maybe even for my age. 2,600 is not normal. You're going to getting all the side effects that happen with elevated androgen levels, hard on your cholesterol, hard on your triglycerides. So yeah. That's not a cruise. Maybe you're hyper responsive, but you'll need to adjust your doses.
That brings up an interesting question, though. So someone like myself, for example, maybe just genetically, I stay really healthy even while lasting.
Yeah, your blood work's remarkable.
I'm quite thankful for that, because it allows me to, honestly, just last longer and gain more. But there's got to be some other risk. I know I can't just do that indefinitely. And probably after this off season of pushing for size again, I'll take it easier. But what's the risk, even if your blood work is excellent?
That's a good question. That's a good question, because it ties it. It's really correlated with the strength versus muscle growth, or because it's not the thing. It's what does the thing do? It's not like injecting yourself with testosterone isn't bad. It's that high androgen levels have all these side effects. And so let's think, what are the side effects? You know, your blood work's going to be out of range. If yours isn't, then that's not a side effect. Your blood pressure is going to be elevated because you know steroid hormones increase or affect aldosterone and cause you to hold more sodium, hold more water. If your blood pressure is not bad, then that's not a problem. If your blood pressure is not bad, then it's unlikely that your kidneys, aside from what can be tested in blood work, aren't bad, which means your heart function is probably normal. So really, if your heart function is normal, you have a normal ejection fraction, you don't have a left ventricular hypertrophy above maybe like 1 millimeter above, is it millimeter? Like I'm thinking like 1.4. If you're above like 1.4, 1.5, I can't remember if that's millimeters, centimeters. I think that's centimeters. Anyways, you know, so 1 millimeter basically, more than 1 millimeter above normal, then your wall thickness is too high. If your blood pressure is not too high, if there's all these things that can be tested, if those are all fine, there really isn't anything other than potentially some of the neurotransmitter effects that are correlated with androgens that Dr. Serrano talks about sometimes.
Well, I've also wondered though, how does it affect aging? Because I'm assuming that if you're on a bunch of gear, you've got higher protein synthesis, but probably higher cell turnover, which means your telomeres are shortening faster.
Apoptosis, isn't there?
Yeah.
Increased cell death.
I think so. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, but that that goes back to what do you consider health? You know, like would you? Yeah. So if health is defined as living longer, or you know, or how long your telomeres are, then yeah, there probably is some still. Well, you're already going to have that as a male, regardless. You know,
I'll just call that a trade-off. But that came to mind because I won't name names here, but I've known of a few people who pushed gear to what I would call like really asinine levels, and you see them maybe every few months or every year, and they look like they've aged 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
Now I don't think they can also say that they were healthy blood work wise that whole time either. But
yeah, if they could, I suppose there's a possibility. Like if you start looking. If your skin starts getting real haggard and you look like you're 62 years old, even if your blood work's good, you probably still say, look, something's going on. I mean, we can't test everything, you know. There's
kind of that quality of life too. Well, we're probably going to be wrapping up here soon, but want to thank you guys again for tuning in. And for the future reference, any questions you want us to answer, just drop us a line. Otherwise, want to highlight really quickly, just because Dave probably won't stay on his own. He's going to be he has started prep for nationals here soon, which is going to be really exciting to see because he's put on some crazy size. I think he'll be updating his log on the Team Troponin site. I'll be vlogging my Olympia prep on there as well. And Justin does Justin things and makes the world smarter.
Mm-hmm. He'll start a dad log.
I'm trying to answer. Yeah. Well, dad log would be I'm watching. My daughters want to watch. Emmy is my second youngest that is my movie buff with me. I love movies. We have a whole home theater and everything, but we're trying to watch the whole Marvel universe during the summer. I didn't realize there's like 40 movies.
Oh yeah.
So,
yeah. That's really her way of suckering you in to spend time with you. That is a high quality problem as a dad. That's awesome.
Mark, Mark's the only one who got it. I knew he would be the one who gets it too, because he always gets my movie references. I didn't remember what episode we were on, so I said we were Troponin Episodes 33 and a third, which is a Naked Gun reference.
Nice. All right, guys. Well, thanks again for tuning in. Are we doing this on Tuesdays going forward?
Yeah, Tuesdays.
Permanently now?
Yeah.
So keep checking in, and thanks, guys, for your support.
Thank you, guys.
I'm going to go watch the original Spider-Man. I can't wait to see how bad the CGI is.
All right. Good night.